welcome back to another Mark on Motoring show report. Today you find me in Locke Park near Barnsley in South Yorkshire. Now, back in the 1860s, Locke Park was donated to the people of Barnsley by Phoebe Locke, widow of Joseph Locke, who was a railway pioneer. I think the site was something like 17 acres back then, but today it's grown to over 40 acres, so it's a huge site. And as you might expect, lots of vehicles on display here today. So this is an event held by Yorkshire Thoroughbred Car Club. I will leave a link in the video description to their page because they do host quite a lot of events throughout Yorkshire throughout the year, so by all means do check that out as well. So today we're actually starting with one of the rarest cars you're likely to find. We've got this Kaiser. Now, I have actually seen this vehicle once before, a couple of years ago at a car show where, from memory, I think it actually won its class. This is actually the only running one, I believe, in the UK at the moment. It's actually one of only two cars in the UK, the other one being in Wales, but this is the only one in England, so chances of you seeing another one, I'd say, are definitely pretty slim. Now, these cars are not particularly the most powerful of cars, but they certainly are one of the most unique. For example, the doors. I don't think I can recall seeing another car with doors like this. They actually slide into the front wings. Really interesting and unique point about these vehicles. But there is a lot more to see here, so let's go and have a look around. Launched in 1948, the Sunbeam Talbot 90 is arguably one of the prettiest saloon car designs from those early post-war years. A product of Nissan Design Studios Europe, designed in London, built in Sunderland with a roof by Carman, it's the K12 Micro CC, which conceals a Grinnell Scorpion. The Scorpion is a reverse trike design much like that of the Morgan three-wheeler, but with a much more modern twist. These cars really caught my attention when they launched in the 1990s. Note all the BMW badges? Well, that is because this car is powered by an 1100cc BMW motorcycle engine. Now, I know when this vehicle was brought out in the morning, the weather was much kinder than it is here, so the owner will no doubt be driving this very gingerly with all that power going to the rear wheels of this lightweight car. The Alfa Romeo 4C was built at Maserati's Modena plant. It had a 1750cc turbocharged engine with a 6-speed dual clutch transmission, a carbon fibre tub with aluminium subframes and Brembo brakes. The Alfa Sud Sprint got a bit of an update in the 1980s. Here we have a 1985 Alfa Sprint QV, or Cloverleaf as they were badged in the UK. Identifiable by the green trim on the bumpers and details like the green carpets and green trim on the grille. The Sprint initially made use of the old Alfa Sud floor pan, consisting of all-round disc brakes which were inboard at the front. Post 1984 though, the cars got the Alfa 33 floor pan, which had revised front suspension, now with outboard disc brakes and drums at the rear. Cloverleaf had a 104 horsepower version of the 1.5 Boxer engine, propelling the car to 110 miles per hour. Cloverleaf also got these grey painted 8-spoke alloy wheels, which took the metric Michelin TRX tyres. But what if you prefer your cars to be of Japanese origin? Well, here we have a 1976 first generation Toyota Celica, initially available in Japan as a notchback with a 1.6 or 2 litre engine. This particular model is actually a 2 litre engined liftback version. My personal choice of Toyota sports car though has always been their midship runabout, better known as the MR2. As always, there is a good turnout of old Fords and old Vauxhalls. One car here that I have fond memories of is the Vauxhall Nova. When I passed my driving test, these things were all the rage. It was certainly the car of choice for most young 17-year-old boy at the time. This particular one, as well, is the SR version, so 1300cc engine, later superseded by the SRI. As I say, these were incredibly popular, look very sporty with those box arches. We've got obviously those very period 3-spoke Vauxhall alloy wheels as well. In fact, back in the late 90s, you would probably struggle to find a standard one of these because they were nearly all modified. The GT and GSI were, of course, the hottest versions, but to many they were just too expensive to insure. These really were the car that most young people aspired to back in the day. I do like the Sierra XR4i. I'm not going to bang on too much about because I have featured this car before at show, but I do love the body style of these. Obviously the only model to have this sort of split window design at the back, which I think is really cool. Obviously you didn't get that with the Cosworth version. You also got this dual level spoiler as well, which is very much a thing of the 1980s, but I really do like that. Of course, we always see plenty of fast Fords at these events. What you don't often see, though, is Austin Maestros. They seemed all but all gone at one point, but we must have every road-going Maestro in Yorkshire here today, because I've seen several of them. We've got a couple of MG Maestros, like this particular one here, which is a very sort of standard-looking car, and then we've got this more modified-looking Maestro. This one actually being an MG Maestro Turbo, but as I say, I have seen a few others as well. I've even seen a Maestro Advantage here today, which I understand was actually one of the later cars that had a lot of extras thrown on it. If we could wind back the clock though and reverse time to 1989, Austin Rover Group had another car of interest, the Rover R8 200 series. This particular one is a 93 214i, so fairly basic, but do note this is the only year of the flat fronted car with the full wraparound indicators. Perhaps you want something a little bit more exotic though, and you've always fancied yourself as a Le Mans racer in the 1960s behind the wheel of something like a Ferrari 250 GTO, or perhaps an AC Cobra, or indeed a Ford GT40. The problem is these days any one of these will run you up to quite a few £1,000,000. So what's the answer? Well, maybe a replica. The notion of a replica is often something of controversy, but some of these cars really are very close to the real deal. So this particular car here is an MDA GT40 and actually is a bespoke chassis and a body that looks just as good as the genuine article. This car is powered by a 5-litre V8 engine and is in the Gulf livery. The Gulf Racing livery is perhaps one of the most iconic liveries in sports car racing from that era, whether it be on a GT40 or the Porsche 917. But certainly behind the wheel of this car I'm sure you'd feel just like Jackie Hicks at Le Mans. But perhaps you want a replica car that's perhaps a little bit more modern looking. Cue the Lamborghini Countach. Or is it? Because you've probably spotted the Q plate already. This is another kit, this time a Mirage from 1990. This particular car was their 91 promo car and appeared in a magazine advert. No V12 under there though, we've actually got a 3.5 litre Rover V8 with some Lamborghini cam covers on top. Open up those scissor doors though and you've got a very authentic looking interior down to the last detail with Lamborghini steering wheel and this beautiful leather upholstery. Perhaps the only giveaway inside here is that Metro heater box. Now I've actually seen one of those used on another one of these replicas, so perhaps it's a good fit for these cars. So many of the details here are genuine Lamborghini parts, including these quad headlamps. The car also has the pantograph front windscreen wiper with the dual blades on. It's even got the genuine 15-inch Lamborghini alloy wheels with 345 section tyres at the rear. But if you like your 80s poster pin-up to be the real deal, check out this next car. So if you're a child of the 1980s like myself, you will remember the Porsche 911, in particular the 930 series of cars. Very much the yuppie car of choice back in the day. Steve, you own this fantastic 930 SC. Yes, 911. Yes. You were telling me it's got a few interesting options on it, hasn't it?
Well, this one, my cousin had this new. Well, my cousin had it for over 10 years. Right. He bought it, and he's done a lot of work on it. The first thing he did was he went to Porsche, he got all new kidney balls, new sills, everything. But this one is quite rare because it's an unusual colour. It's hell bronze. Okay. And in the 80s, all the yuppies were buying these and they wanted either red or black. Yeah. And like I said, this gold, hell bronze, is very unusual. Yeah. You don't see them very often. But I think it suits it. It's a real nice colour.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. Yeah. I must admit, I'm not normally a fan of black wheels on a car, but with these sort of polished rims and the black and the gold, it kind of sets off.
One wheel, yeah.
Yeah.
One wheel.
But it does it against this gold paintwork.
Yeah,
It really
it looks
does
good, doesn't
look
it?
good. Yeah.
And like I say, this is the whoever bought this new, they ordered this full sports pack.
Yep.
So it's got the sports front apron, sports suspension, sports rear suspension. It's got the turbo whale tail.
Yep.
Which there's two type of whale tails. Have you ever, whether you've never noticed, there's one called a T-tray,
Right.
which is flat.
Okay.
And if you look at this one, this is a turbo one. It's got edges on.
Ah, right. Okay.
Yeah, so this has got the turbo whale tail. It's got the turbo engine. It's a flat 6.
Yep.
But it ain't got the turbo.
Yeah.
But apparently they called the turbo the Widowmaker because there was that.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, they spun about on the back end, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, was it Clarkson who said the E30 3 Series BMW were the third biggest killer of yuppies after 9/11s
Probably.
and accidents with braces? I think he said.
Probably. I think there were a lot of yuppies killed in these.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Well, they were making a lot of money in the 80s, weren't they?
Oh, some of them were they were buying them with the bonuses, weren't they?
Goodness.
Yeah. What a time to be alive.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, it's a fantastic example, Steve. It's been great having a look at it. Thank you very much.
It's won a prize today, surprisingly.
Oh right. Okay. So
I've kept coming out and wiping it down because it's been raining all day.
you and everyone else, I must. Every time there's a break, it rain. I see people out with the chamois, and as soon as they start drying them off, rain comes again.
I know, right?
Hence why it's June and I'm wearing a raincoat.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But it's been a good show nonetheless.
It's been really busy. Unfortunately, a lot started to go because of the weather.
Yeah. Which means I'd better press on before everyone leaves. Well,
Yeah, you
thank you
better
very
go.
much, Steve.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank
cheers.
you. The car I've actually featured before is this Honda CRX. I took a look at this one at Crow's Nest in Dewsbury last year. Really immaculate car. In fact, this was actually a class winner last year at this very show. But yeah. Do check that video out if you want to know more about this car, because you're probably not going to find a nicer example. So this Aston Martin DB7 really is an elegant design. Back in the day, these were somewhat wrongly chastised, often referred to as being a jag in a fancy frock, but well, if you are going to have a car that is something that's a bit dressed up, you can't really do much better, I don't think. Now, back in the day, I would have probably taken the Aston every time, but today, I don't know, there's something about this Lomax behind me that probably floats my boat a little bit more. Quite a lot of the time when you see these, it's the Lomax 223, which were the 3-wheel version, so 2 wheels up front, a single wheel at the back. This particular model though is the 224, so we've actually got a 4-wheeler. Basically these are a kit, a British kit. Up front we've got this 2CV derived Citroen air-cooled twin. We've got a lovely Sierra Sapphire Cosworth here, but there's something actually that's even more striking next to it. Phil, you've got this fantastic buggy here. Now, I presume this is VW Beetle derived?
That's right, VW vehicle. It's got a 2-litre engine in it. It's been tuned to max. It's like, you won't believe how quick it is. It goes sideways, it's just unbelievable how quick it is.
Yeah. I suppose there's no weight to them really, is there, as well? And like I say, the engine that's in it will certainly be a lot more powerful than what they would have had back in the day.
Yeah, I can't remember what they said it was, which car it comes out of, but it's not actually a Volkswagen Beetle engine, it's another engine what's in it, which was 16, then it was modified to 2-litre.
Okay.
But like I say, I bought it out of Preston, chap died. Won a few medals, cups as well, what we got with it. But we've had it like 12 months, but we've never done that with it. And like I say, I've come out today.
Yeah.
And luckily it hasn't broke down, touch wood so far.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly stands out. I mean, this paint job's phenomenal on it, isn't it? It's obviously we've got this sort of airbrush graphic here, and this paint fade down the side. I mean, that is such a sort of 1970s thing, isn't it, with these cars?
I think it gave me some magazines and all, VW magazines, and it's in that.
Yeah.
A couple of pages on it in that. But I just liked looking at it as soon as I saw it. I mean, we're a bit of attacking, and when I went to look at it on eBay, it didn't look that good because it didn't do it justice.
Yeah.
So once I got it home, sent it off to be valeted, it come back like this.
I think the thing with these though as well is it's one of these cars that you can polish them up and make them look pristine, but even if you turned up with one that looks well used, it kind of works on these where it might not on something else.
Another thing is, when you start it up, you know it's there.
Yeah.
It's so loud.
Yeah.
You can hear it 2 miles away. My wife don't like it. She would come today, but she said, no, I'm not going in that, she said, so, you know. But yeah, it's just a bit of fun, isn't it? Old men, fancy cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure the car will grow on her,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and I'm sure it certainly gets a lot of attention
Oh,
when
yeah.
you take it out.
Well, I do like unusual stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I do buy just unusual stuff.
Yeah.
And I just like, as soon as I saw it, my wife knew that I was going to buy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, but yeah, it is what it is, isn't it? A bit of fun.
Well, I always say with an old car, wives always know where the husbands are, because usually we're messing about with them, aren't we?
Well, this is why she lets me have all this crap. It's like, I don't go out drinking now, I don't booze.
No.
You know, I used to like boozing. But,
No.
I've got my little toys.
Yeah.
But she said, I've got to get rid of some toys. So
Right.
I've got too many.
Right.
But yeah.
Oh, well, that's smashing. Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Phil.
You're right.
And a top tip to any ladies that are watching, if you've got a husband who has a drink problem, get him to get an old car and you won't have any more issues.
That's it.
Yeah?
No womanising no more.
No.
That's it.
That's smashing, right. Well, plenty more to see. Thank you very much, Phil. And I'm going to crack on now because there's still a lot more cars to cover.
See you later.
Cheers. We should always make a point of coming to the back row at any of these car shows because you never know what you're going to find. Mark II Golf GTI, it's pretty much hot hatch royalty. Lovely little Mini there. But one hot hatch that's always been a firm favourite of mine, probably to no surprise, Cleo Williams. This particular one is a Williams too, so the 2s and 3s were a little bit less desirable and a little less valuable than the original cars, but nonetheless, these cars are definitely worthy of the status in their own right. Obviously, the originals were so popular that Renault saw fit to make 2 more generations. They didn't come with the numbered plaques that you got in the original cars. I believe the Williams 3s also had a different shade of blue, and I think they had a sunroof. But you still got that F7R engine, the 2-litre 16 valve. These really were great cars. You got a bit more track as well. Obviously we've got those blistered arches, very similar to the 1.8 16 valve that came before, but these really were the daddy. Now, I did actually interview my friend and fellow owner Glyn, who's got an original Cleo Williams 1, and he actually bought a book that was all in French about the Cleo Williams, translated it word for word, and there was some really interesting information. So this car, the parcel shelf in it, as the garment carrier, that was all done to add weight. Even the carpets were heavier carpets in the back, and this was all done to try and offset some of the additional weight that was up front from that larger 2-litre engine. It's really balmy, isn't it, to think that Renault had to actually add weight into the car. Now, I'm hoping at some point that I will get one of these on the channel to drive. I've also been offered a Renault Spider, which also used the F7R engine. The one F7R powered car I have driven to Presso on the channel is the Megane Coupe with that engine in. So you may wish to check that out at some point, but yeah, these engines really do howl. I mean, they rev out to like 7,000 revs, and it's one of those cars that the engine really does sort of beg you to rev them out. There's not as much torque lower down the range, but yeah, really are a phenomenal car, and you can see why they're worth so much money these days. This Vauxhall Velox actually caught my eye earlier. For an old car, these are actually a fair old size of vehicle. Not really featured these before, but there is another Velox here today, an earlier model, which I did actually feature at a previous show, and quite a striking design. You can certainly see in the other model the very sort of 50s American styling. This one, again, very much a product of the 1960s. You can really see it in that styling, and I think it looks fantastic. As does this rather elegant Singer Vogue. Now, admittedly, this is not a model that I can claim to know a great deal about, but it certainly does look fantastic, doesn't it? With its period lines and paint colour and a rather nice luxurious interior, much as I could also say for this rather wonderful Wolsey. In fact, there were actually a couple of saloon cars that I found rather interesting that are vehicles that I'm maybe not all that familiar with, or such as this Opel, which I actually don't recall having ever seen this particular model in the past. But fear not, if old saloon cars are not your idea of a dream classic, well, we've got something coming up that you might like, something a little bit more racy. You'll seldom go to a classic car show in the UK and not see a good selection of MGBs, and for good reason. These cars were incredibly popular. In fact, some of the most popular sports cars ever made. This particular example here just so happens to be a V8. Initially the V8s were all Costello conversions, but the cars did prove quite popular, and later they were actually taken in-house and built by MG in Abingdon. Of course, many of these cars did also go for export, and it wasn't just MG who took advantage of this. After the Second World War, American GIs fell in love with the little British sports cars, and they took lots of them back home with them. Eager to capitalise on this were manufacturers such as MG, and of course Triumph, who were perhaps one of their closest rivals throughout the 1960s, 70s and into the early 80s. Triumph also built a number of different models, many of which did go for export, some that were obviously also quite popular here in the UK as well, things like this big V8 Stag. It was also nice to see plenty of small cars like the MG Midget and this rather nice little frog-eyed Sprint, which is probably one of the most characterful sports cars you'll ever see. Here we have another MGB which is definitely worthy of a mention. This is Martin's BGT, which is probably one of the finest examples you're ever likely to see, and the judges seem to concur as well because it frequently picks up awards. Onto the Daimler SP250, at the more expensive end of the sports car market. Often referred to as the Daimler Dart, but the name was dropped as it was already trademarked. It was the last car built by an independent Daimler in Coventry before Jaguar's takeover, and although a replacement was penned, it never actually went into production, probably due to the fact they already had the E-Type Jaguar. The Daimler was quite an expensive car, but the E-Type was actually a car that was sold far cheaper than it really should have been. Jaguar really could have capitalised a little bit more on these cars. These were very, very popular and perhaps one of the most desirable sports cars of the era. Fast forward to the 1990s and it's TVR, this being a Griffith 500, which is the car that really sort of introduced me to the marque back in the day, with these nice curvaceous lines and some bold body colours. Those taillights look a bit familiar though. Mark III Cavalier maybe? Answers in the comments below. Here we have the Mercedes R170 SLK. It's a 200 compressor. Now I've actually reviewed one of these on the channel previously. In fact, it's been one of the channel's most popular videos. I've also driven the 171 generation that followed it as well, with the larger 350 engine. Quite a nice looking car. This one's actually got some AMG wheels on it as well. Very nice. Well, something perhaps more eye-catching than a Mercedes is this Suzuki Carry. Obviously we've got a few modifications on here. So we've got this GMC badge, and we've got the black and red, the 18 style on here, spot lamps along the top as well. I mean, to do that to a 1.3 Suzuki Carry, I think that's fantastic. It's one of these vehicles I just imagine it must grab attention every event it goes to. Next to that, Lotus Esprit S4. I've always been a huge fan of these cars, whether it's the earlier Giorgetto Giugiaro cars that were sort of more angular, or the later Peter Stevens cars that came, and obviously these sort of evolved from that design. But yeah, absolutely stunning. Definitely a car on my bucket list, one that I've always wanted to own, whether that be one of the 4-cylinder NA or turbo cars, or the V8s that came later on. Got a few interesting modern sports cars here, things like this Aston Martin behind me, Porsche 911 GTS over there. Of course, if you really want sort of big sports car performance on a lower budget or something more lightweight, well, you can always look at a 7 derived car. Now, the only limits with these really is your budget and your imagination. Obviously you can do something like a low cost, where you literally get the plans, cut all the tubes yourself to the dimensions that are required, and do a complete scratch build, or you can buy a kit where most of the parts are there for you. Engine wise, well, I dare say over the years I've had everything from sort of Pinto engines, which ended up in a lot of kits, through to probably in this day and age I would imagine Honda Type R engines maybe. I dare say people have even probably crammed V8s into here. It really is just down to your engineering prowess. I do love this Bond Keep built by Bond Cars in Preston, based on a Triumph chassis. I really do like these, and I have actually featured this car before and interviewed the owner in a previous video, so I'm not going to bang on too much about this one. Car next to it though, Nissan Sunny. This particular version is a GTI as well, and it must be the most understated hot hatch you're likely to come across from the era. So a 1991 car. Basically, it's a 2-litre 16-valve front-wheel drive. The real halo car, of course, was the GTI-R, which was also turbocharged and had 4-wheel drive. But yeah, I think this particular model is a real sleeper, and this is a really tidy example as well. We've actually got the original Nissan stamped headlamp protectors on there as well, and the GTI mats in there and everything. Yeah, really nice car. I like that very much. There's been no shortage of Ford Fiestas today. Same can be said for E30 3 Series BMW, and we seem to have a few variants. A very tidy looking saloon here, 318, and we've also got a 318 convertible. Really nice looking car, this one actually. The paint looks fantastic on it, as does the interior. I've also seen a E30 estate here today as well, which again, quite a rarity to see an estate version. The BMW E30 may well have been the sports saloon of choice for the young urban professional of the 1980s, but go back to the late 60s and early 70s, well, for me there was probably only one choice of sports saloon. That would be the Rover P6, and in this instance this car is the 3.5 litre Buick V8 with a manual gearbox. These cars are now incredibly desirable today. It's nice to actually see a few Fords that are not the hot versions, some more run-of-the-mill models, the kind of thing that we used to actually see on the roads all the time. So we've got a Ford Fiesta Mark II here behind me. That one is actually a 1.1L. Again, very much a mainstay of British motoring in the 1980s. Mark IV Ford Escort, a 3-door one, and this particular model being a bonus. Both of these cars do look showroom fresh as well, so it really is like stepping back in time seeing these two cars here today. Got something a little bit more exciting to drive though, but it's always nice to see a Peugeot 106 Rally. Okay, so this is the S2 rather than the slightly more desirable Series 1 cars, but still a great fun little car. The little sort of Peugeots and Citroens always were a great drive. I've seen a few Mark III Fiestas here today as well, ranging from a really immaculate Fiesta Finesse through to an RS and even an XR2i. This particular car though is the SI, which superseded the XR2i. Actually I do remember a friend's mother having a 5-door one of these, and it was a very quick little car, I'll be honest. Styling, they sort of rounded off the bumpers and things on them a bit, put these round spot lamps on. I don't think they were ever sort of as popular as the XR2i, but again, remember this was the 1990s and we're at a point where insurance on hot hatches, well, really were becoming uninsurable because so many were stolen. So the SI was sort of an effort to make a hot hatch that were a little bit more insurance friendly. There's no shortage of Ford Capris here today. To think that in the sort of 1990s these were 10 a penny, there weren't really a lot of love for these cars. Very different today though. This particular example here is a 2-litre S, probably one of the later cars. This engine bay is absolutely immaculate. You're probably not going to see a cleaner one, I wouldn't have thought. We've also seen a very nice Mark II earlier on, which is actually a GT. It's got the black with the gold striping on. I've actually interviewed another owner of one, Paul, who owns a white one, and I think of about 1,500 or so cars, about 500 were white, I believe, so really rare cars. Of course, the sporty Capris actually had the humble beginnings from something a bit more pedestrian, generally Ford Cortina underpinnings. I actually quite like this Granada here, Mark II Granada, but this being a pre-facelift as well, a fairly lowly model, a 2.3, but I honestly can't remember the last time I saw one of these pre-facelift cars. Obviously, most of the ones I've seen have been the later cars with the rib tail lights on, but yeah, really nice. Sadly, we had no control over the weather at Locke Park, and we did seem to spend a lot of time darting back and forth for cover. The event still did attract a lot of visitors though, and there was a fantastic selection of vehicles, some very sort of rare and unique vehicles at that. If your car hasn't appeared in here yet, well, there's still plenty more to come, but if it doesn't pop up in this video and you feel it's got an interesting story and is perhaps worthy of coverage at a future event, well, do come and see me if you spot me at another event in the near future. Also, there are some vehicles that I've maybe not featured because perhaps I've covered them in a previous video, such as this Renault 4 for example, which appears in a video in the extensive back catalogue of videos that are now been accrued on the channel. It would be difficult to try and pick a winner out of this fantastic selection of cars on display here, but for me, if I had to pick one car of the show, well, I would quite possibly pick this really rare Citroën CX. Now, CXs are not a common car by any stretch of the imagination, certainly in the UK, but this one is perhaps rarer than most. Not only is it the estate version of the car, but this is a CX Familiale. That means that this one has not 5 but 7 seats. Yep, we've got a third row bench seats in the back of this car, and it's so vast that there's still space behind that third row of seats for some luggage as well. Quite remarkable really, and perhaps if you had a large family, certainly as many did back in France, then this would have probably been the ideal car for you. Now, despite the fact that this would have probably been quite a workhorse back in its day, this car wears its half century extremely well. Just look at that velour interior, it's absolutely superb. Pop the bonnet and have a look in the engine bay and, well, it's the same story. It really is a superb, immaculate example of one of these vehicles. Check out that spare wheel and those spheres tucked to either side of the engine bay, or the top of the engine. I really like the numbers on the top of each cylinder as well, which is an interesting touch. Perhaps the only other vehicle for me in contention maybe would have been this Bedford van. When I saw this actually pull into the show, I had to rush over and have a look at it. As you can see, it is in the old British Telecom livery. These would have been quite a common sight on Britain's roads back in the sort of 1970s and 80s. Now, as you can see, in the back of this van, it's like a rolling museum piece. Look at all this sort of period telecom gear, all various equipment, tools and other items. It's really, really fascinating to see all this stuff, and it's the kind of thing that we could have easily forgotten about. I did actually have a very brief chat with the owner off camera, and this vehicle did actually see service in South Yorkshire. He really has done a fantastic job of preserving this piece of history. So behind me we have a Hillman Avenger, but if you want to see something a little bit rarer, take a look at this. So what we have here is an Avenger that is a one of one. So we've got a up to 1976 style body shell. Car actually built in 79, registered in 1980, and what we started out with was a standard 1600cc Avenger. The guy in the factory wanted a convertible, and what he's basically done is had a special roll cage made to fit into this car to give it the structural rigidity to stop it all sort of folding up on itself. So this vinyl section at the front with the sunroof, that's just a fixed roof, and then you've got a folding convertible roof at the back there. It's also slightly lower on Avenger Tiger suspension as well. But if you want to see another unusual Avenger, well, what do you call an Avenger if it's a US market spec? You end up with a Plymouth Cricket. Now, I'm told that this actually isn't an American spec car, this is a UK one that's been made to look like the American spec car. But yeah, definitely quite interesting. This one's also had a bit of modification. We can see we've got a roll cage and some bucket seats in there as well. Even French cars, we've had a few at the show today. Normally I find quite often I'm the only person here with a French car. Peugeot 304 convertible, you really don't see too many of these. In fact, last year I did interview Dieter, a German chap who'd fetched one to Brooklands last year that had been in the family for quite a while, and yeah, I think up to that point I'd not actually seen one at a show, so a real rare sight. Always nice to see a Mercedes SL. This particular one is a 350 as well, so we've got that V8 engine in there. I'm rather liking this lovely Saab 9000 here, this particular one being a 9000 turbo. They actually ran one of these, I believe, round a bowl continuously during development for several days, pretty much flat out, just to prove how durable these cars really were. Obviously, it's a known fact that Saab were also quite big on safety as well back in the day, and this model was obviously co-developed with a few other partners. So you had the Lancia Tamer, we had a Fiat version of the car as well, and then there was also the last one to join the lineup was the Alfa Romeo, which did actually look a little bit different to the other sister cars. But yeah, these were quite a machine, and obviously there was pretty much a choice of the educated man. So I remember in high school, 2 science teachers, one of them drove a Volvo 700 series, the other one drove a Saab 9000, which I think pretty much tells you everything you need to know. I'm staggered by the range of pre-war cars that are here today. I've got this lovely Alvis, further back there, MG Midget, and a whole row of other pre-war designs. One I actually have been looking at is this particular MG here. I was having a chat with the owner of this car earlier on. It's actually a South African import, so yeah. It's all original, never been repainted or anything, and obviously because it's come from South Africa, it hasn't suffered the corrosion that a lot of the cars here in the UK did, but it really is a lovely thing. Now, one car I couldn't walk by without showing you is this Jaguar. Now, this is an XK150. It's certainly been a long time since I've seen one of these in the metal. Now, Jaguar might not have been the most expensive British cars you could buy, but these were certainly one of the more higher-end sports cars of the day. Now, back in the day there was a very high rate of purchase tax on vehicles over a certain value, which made sports cars a very expensive luxury. Remember, this was Britain that was still recovering from the Second World War. This particular example has been lovingly restored. Its owner has really gone to some lengths to try and keep this car as original as possible, to the point where sort of everything on it is as you would have seen it from the factory. Really, really nice car. So what are the odds you don't see Jaguar XKs, and then I've just seen 2 XK150s at the same show? When does that ever happen? Now, something you don't see in the UK every day is a Plymouth Roadrunner. You certainly won't see one quite like this car here. Chris, you've done quite a bit to this car by the look of it.
Yeah, my son and I spent just under 3 years restoring it about a year ago. Finished about a year ago, and we've owned it for 19 years now.
Right.
Take it drag racing as well as attending shows like this.
Yeah. Wow. So 19 years must really have some tales to tell. What's it like on the drag strip then?
It'll do 10.78 in the quarter and 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds. As far as winning things, you win some, you lose some.
Yeah. So in terms of power then, what have we got under the hood of this one?
After the third rebuild, we've got 650 horsepower now, 590 foot-pound of torque.
Blimey, that's enough to pull a house down then.
Well, it does its job, put it that way.
And what capacity have we got in there?
7.2 litre V8.
7.2, blimey.
Yeah. And it's a stock block. There's nothing, there's no turbos, no nitrous, no superchargers, anything like that.
No, so it just shows how robust these engines were, doesn't it? I mean, generally a lot of the standard road cars didn't really put a lot of power out, and they were very understressed engines, weren't they?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it does rev really low to what modern cars do, but as long as it keeps going, that's all I'm bothered about.
Oh yeah. So in terms of transmission then, what have we got sending all that power to the back?
It did come with a 4-speed manual transmission, but we've changed it to a 3-speed manually shifted automatic.
Oh, okay.
Basically for faster time drag racing, that's all.
Oh, right, okay. Excellent.
But it makes it a lot easier to drive, and obviously no clutch to be worried about with a manual gearbox.
Yeah, excellent. Well, that's smashing, thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. Thanks very much.
A recurring theme at today's show seems to be the sheer numbers of every particular model of vehicle. We do seem, the cars that you might normally see the odd one of once a blue moon, and you come here and I seem to be seeing 2 or 3 of them. We've got no shortage of Bentleys and Rolls-Royce here as well today. The running cost of a Rolls-Royce sounds like something a little bit daunting and you think that it might well cripple you. Well, there is always other options if you want a classic car with a little bit of that luxury. I've seen a couple of Van den Plaars here today, so we've got this Van den Plaar here behind me, which is obviously a badge engineered car. You could get these in MG and Austins and various other derivatives. I think there was a Wolseley as well from memory, but we've got all the leather and the walnut and the tray tables and all the things that you would expect to see in your luxury car. There's also been a Van den Plaar version of the old Allegro as well, which again was one of those those cars that for a while people did sort of make light of, but obviously quite a desirable little collectible these days. Of course, at classic car shows you do tend to find that people like to get the deck chairs and the tables out. Of course, when you're with Bentley or a Rolls Royce, there are standards to be met, and we've probably got the best table of any that I've actually seen here today. Obviously everyone's sort of been hiding out of the weather, and I think most of the goodies off the table have gone by now because it is late in the day. But yeah, quite a setup and very nice to see. Everyone enjoying themselves?
Yes.
Yay.
Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that British stiff upper lip. We don't care if it rains in June. We'll still. Yeah. Thank you. And I think on that note, it's time to wrap this one up. Obviously, there's plenty of other shows like this already on the channel. There's quite an extensive back catalogue, so by all means, feel free to check some of those out. We've also got quite a few car reviews. If we do actually get a dry summer, I've still got quite a few car reviews scheduled that I just haven't had the opportunity to film yet because the weather's been so hit and miss. I really am going to try and make a conscious effort to try and get those done and start trickling a few of those out to you in the very near future. As always, thanks for watching. Continue to like, comment, subscribe, all the usual stuff. And again, do check out the video description for any links to various clubs and things as well, because I always try and put a little bit of extra information in there too. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you very soon on the next video. It's goodbye from me.